Hello, this week I'm baking Gougères, sorry if I've said that wrong, by Claire Saffitz from Dessert Person. I've never actually made choux pastry before, so it was a bit of a learning curve for me, but I think they came out okay, so let's jump in. First up, I'm adding some milk to a saucepan, and then I think it was whole milk, and then a bit of water, obviously there. I will say I did compare to a few other recipes, just to kind of make sure it all was looking about right. One of them was Felicity Cloake, so I'll link to that below. And then I added some salt and some butter and melted that together, and then quickly add the flour. I'm just gently stirring it together so the flour doesn't like fluff out of the pan, and then beating it together a bit, and then it goes back on the heat. So some of the recipes said to beat it until it was smooth, some said into a ball, some said like mashed potatoes. So in the end, I just went with time, and I mean, they seemed to come out pretty well, but yeah, I wasn't too sure when they'd be ready. And then you beat them together a little bit to get rid of some of the steam. And then once that's been done, I think this is for about a minute or so, then it can go into the mixer. And so this is just with the paddle attachment. And I made half the amount of the recipe, so I think the recipe had 5 eggs, so I ended up doing about 2.5. So I just added the first egg and beated it until it was really well combined, and then added the second egg and started mixing off slowly at first, and then beating it together until it's properly emulsified. And you can see it's quite thick looking, quite sticky. It needs to be apparently quite a dropping consistency, so I've added a little bit more beaten egg just down the side there, and again waiting for it to all come together. It's looking a lot smoother, but still quite thick, so adding a bit more egg. There's quite a bit of egg in this. And just waiting for that to come together. And then Claire Saffitz has a video of this, a really good one on her YouTube, which I'll link down below, and she shows you what it should look like. So it's thick and sticking to the spoon, but it will also drop off and create this kind of V. And I felt like this dough had reached that consistency, so going by those cues, I felt like we were in a good place for it. So then because we're making like savoury ones, we're going to add the spices. So this is some freshly grated nutmeg and some, I think this was paprika or cayenne pepper, and also I'm adding mustard powder because quite a few recipes had that, and I quite like the idea of having that slight kick. In the Claire Saffitz, she earlier on adds sugar, but I didn't want to do that, so I left it out. And then I'm adding a mix of cheddar and parmesan, because I didn't have the cheese that was in the recipe and I couldn't be bothered to go buy it. So I've added that all together, and it's this kind of lumpy dough. And then I'm adding that to a piping bag as best I can. I'm certainly not a pro. I don't see the pros like wiping their spatula on the inside of the piping bag, but you do what you can. Also, I'm not a particular pro at piping at all, as you will see later on, but it's in the bag, and then I'm just kind of going to squish that down. So the reason there's an egg in some water in a bowl is I made this with eggs from the fridge, so I just kept them in a bowl of warm water just to bring them up to room temperature. So that's the mixture all in a piping bag. I made these for New Year's Eve, so I did this earlier on in the day, and then I'm piping just before I go to a party, hence the kind of light shift, just so you know. And then I'm piping them out. In the book, she has like, can you trace circles on the back of baking paper, but I just thought I'd wing it, as you can tell. Not the prettiest things. I don't know how many there ended up being. I think maybe it was around 35, something like that. I could count right now, but I can't be bothered. And then using just like wet fingers, trying to mold them into slightly rounder spherical shapes rather than the blobs I had done. And then they go into the oven. And I didn't egg wash them or add cheese, which she has in the recipe because I couldn't be bothered, and others don't either. But they seem to come out good enough. They weren't as puffy as I'd hoped. Maybe you can see in the pictures. They were a little bit shallow and they did kind of flatten over time, but they tasted great. I made them for New Year's. They all went. Everyone really liked them. And I'll definitely try and do something with choux pastry again. If you liked this, then please subscribe and I'll see you next time.